Today, we are diving into one of the most epic battles of the early internet. Seriously, this was a high-stakes war between a retail giant that basically was the industry and a tiny digital upstart that pretty much nobody saw coming. And trust me, this was about way more than just selling books. This was a fight for the future of how we buy, well, everything. Let's get into it.
All right, so let's set the scene. It's late 1996, and the air is buzzing with this new thing called the internet. And this new kind of store, an online bookstore called Amazon.com, is starting to make some serious waves. I mean, no physical stores, a direct line to customers, and publications like Fortune were starting to notice. They could see that these little online shops had a real shot at turning entire industries upside down.
But then, get this, not even a year later, the whole story flips on its head. The very same magazine is now asking, wait a second, is Barnes & Noble about to just crush this little newcomer? The thinking was, if it's so easy for Amazon to jump into this game, what's stopping the 800-pound gorilla with all the money and power from doing the exact same thing? And that right there, that sets up our whole conflict.
And that conflict really exploded in mid-1997. For a little while, Amazon had the online book world all to itself. But now, the biggest name in the physical book world was ready to bring its immense power online to challenge them. The war for the bookstore was officially on.
So, let's meet the reigning champion, the undisputed king, Barnes & Noble. Long before most of us even had an email address, these guys had built an absolute empire in the real world. They weren't just a bookstore. For millions of people, they were the bookstore.
And this number right here, wow. This tells you everything you need to know about their dominance. In just 5 years, between 91 and 96, the number of giant book superstores jumped from just under 100 to almost 800. Barnes & Noble was leading that charge, and they were completely changing the game. This was a full-blown retail revolution happening in malls and shopping centers all across America.
But here's the really brilliant part. Barnes & Noble wasn't just selling a product. They were selling a whole experience. They made their stores a destination. You didn't just run in to grab a book, you'd go to spend the afternoon. You'd browse for hours, grab a coffee, usually a Starbucks, maybe meet an author. It felt like a community hub. It was comfortable, it was welcoming, it was smart. So when you boil it all down, their entire strategy was built on one thing: physical scale. They had this huge network of stores in all the best locations, a brand that everybody knew and trusted, and a customer base that genuinely loved being there. These were real, tangible, powerful advantages.
Okay, so now let's pivot to the challenger. While Barnes & Noble was busy perfecting the physical world, this guy, a former Wall Streeter named Jeff Bezos, he sees this one wild statistic. The web was growing at something like 2,300% a year, and he saw his opening. Not just to sell books, but to build something the world had never seen before, the Earth's biggest bookstore.
And this right here is where the game completely changes. Now think about it. A massive Barnes & Noble superstore, the biggest of the big, could hold maybe 175,000 different books, which is incredible. But because Amazon didn't need physical shelves, they could offer a virtual selection of over 1 million titles. It was a catalog that was just physically impossible for any brick-and-mortar store to even dream of matching.
So you're probably asking, how on earth did they do that? Well, it all came down to a completely revolutionary way of thinking about inventory. Barnes & Noble's model was carry all, sell some. They had to stock tons of books in every single store, hoping they'd sell. Amazon just flipped that completely on its head. Their model was sell all, carry few. They only kept around 2,000 of the absolute best sellers in their own warehouse. Every other book, they just ordered it from a wholesaler after you, the customer, had already paid for it. Genius.
And this slide, oh man, this is the aha moment. This shows just how insanely efficient Amazon's model was. Inventory turns is basically a measure of how quickly you sell through your stuff and turn it back into cash. Barnes & Noble did that about twice a year. Amazon, 70 times, 70. They were basically printing cash with their tiny inventory, which they could then pour right back into growing the business. So with this incredibly disruptive model, Amazon was growing like a weed. And by early 1997, Barnes & Noble knew it had a real fight on its hands. They couldn't just sit back and ignore this threat anymore. It was time to launch a counterattack, and the online war began for real.
And the speed of it all was just dizzying. Look at this timeline from just the first half of 1997. In January, B&N announces their plan. By March, they're on AOL.
In May, they launched their site and immediately sue Amazon over that Earth's biggest bookstore slogan. A week later, Amazon hits back by going public and raising a boatload of cash. And then in June, Amazon just unleashes a massive price war. Boom, boom, boom. This was all-out corporate warfare. Let's make this really concrete. Take a huge bestseller at the time, Into Thin Air. Amazon offered a killer discount, 40% off, deeper than Barnes & Noble's 30%. But, and this is a big but, once you tacked on shipping, the total cost to get the book to your door was actually higher on Amazon. It shows you the fight was way more complex than just who had the lowest sticker price.
So all of this, the different business models, the price wars, the lawsuits, it all brings us right to the heart of this story. The fundamental showdown between two completely different philosophies. It is the classic tale of bricks versus clicks.
Let's look at the tail of the tape for this championship fight. In this corner, you've got the heavyweight champ, Barnes & Noble, the retail giant. They've got the world-famous brand, hundreds of stores, a distribution system already in place, and hey, they actually made a profit. And in the other corner, you have Amazon, the digital upstart. They had that unbelievable selection, that super efficient, low-cost model, the power to collect customer data, and a laser focus on one thing, growth, even if it meant losing money for years to come.
So this leaves us with the ultimate question. I want you to really try and put yourself back in 1997. Forget everything you know about the world today. Looking at these two fighters, knowing their strengths and their weaknesses, who would you have bet on? The proven, profitable power of the retail giant or the disruptive, unproven potential of the digital upstart? The answer to that question would literally shape the world we all live in today.